We're here in Hampstead Garden Suburb and this home has a heat pump, so let's go and find out more. Hello!
Hi, welcome, come in.
Thanks for having us. So we understand you have a heat pump here, is that right?
That's right, yes. Yeah, so we decided to get a heat pump. I think it's the technology of the future.
Okay.
My main motivation for it was that I wanted to be off fossil fuels
Okay.
and off gas.
It feels warm in here today, it feels lovely.
Thank you.
It's not just the heat pump, right? I mean, you've got other things going on, insulation and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, look, show us around. We'd love to see what it's like to have a heat pump.
The heat pump unit's in the garden. Should we go see?
Definitely, let's do it. Okay, so sort of hidden away here in the back of the garden. So tell us what you've got going on here.
Yeah, so we were quite lucky. We already had this mature hedge,
okay,
which screens it quite well. If we hadn't had that, I think the trust would have insisted on more screening.
Right.
We've got two units in here. We've got the aircon unit as well as the heat pump unit there.
Okay, fantastic. And it's very quiet. I mean, we're not hearing anything now. Is it normally like this? Do you hear it from inside?
It's actually off at the moment, which is why you
Okay.
can't hear it. But I've been really pleasantly surprised when it is on.
Right.
It's a barely audible hum. It's
Right.
really quiet, which has been
And is that similar to the aircon unit, or sort of? I mean, do you notice any difference between them, or?
they're on at different times,
Right.
obviously, because the aircon
Yeah.
tends to be when it's super hot.
Yeah.
And we're heating obviously generally when it's cold.
Sure.
But I'd say the heat pump's slightly quieter,
Right.
but quite similar.
Right. Okay. So, and sort of space-wise, it's not too dissimilar from an aircon unit, really.
It's slightly bigger. I'd
Right.
say it's probably about the same volume as maybe a wheelie bin.
Okay.
Maybe slightly bigger.
Yeah. So obviously the air source heat pump is here, and how was it sort of bringing cables and things like that? What was that like?
Yeah, so the unit has to be outside, and for a monoblock unit it has to be within 12 metres of the house.
Right.
We then had to dig a big trench from the unit to the inside of the house.
Right.
And that trench had to fit quite a thick diameter pipe in it.
Right.
Because it's super heavily insulated. Because with a monoblock unit, a lot of the water heating happens in this unit outside. And so you're trying to minimise the amount of heat loss between the unit and the house.
Right. Understood.
So, should we go and see what's inside?
Let's do it. I'll follow you. Okay, so this is the heat pump room we're in. Wow, it's quite a setup you got here. Is it quite large? Do they all need to have this amount of space, or?
Yeah, so I know it looks a bit intimidating, but I think that because we converted this garage and we had all the space, the engineers just took the space that they had, whereas if we were trying to fit this into an old airy cupboard, for example, then they would have had to have been a bit more creative. But you can see it all laid out here. And everybody does need a hot water tank.
Right.
But this is a 300 litre, which is why it's so tall.
It's quite tall, yeah.
Yeah. For most average families, I think you could totally fine with a 250 litre or even a 200 litre. Okay. We just oversized.
Great. Okay, so someone could sort of conceivably have about half the space that you've got here, if not maybe even less. And yeah, and you've given lots of space around that, but it's not necessarily required for a heat pump install. And you've got a hot tank here. Are there any other bits that sort of are important to a heat pump setup?
So this is the hot tank. This is the kind of main control system, which tells us the temperatures coming in and out.
Right.
These are our underfloor heating manifolds, and these are our buffer.
I've just noticed you're 43 degrees, so that's perfect. Now, do you have hot showers? Because most people's boilers are set at 60 degrees, and they might be worried about that. So, are you a cold shower family here, or?
No, definitely a hot shower family.
Okay, great.
But,
great.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way that it uses more water because it's using 95% hot water when it's trying to heat your shower, as opposed to when people are running a boiler, then they'll use 50-50 hot water and cold water to mix to the right temperature.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for showing us this part of your home and your heat pump setup. Wow. Okay, so we've seen your heat pump outside and inside, and we'd just love to know a bit more about it. So how easy was it as a process to get the heat pump installed?
Yeah, so I would say with a heat pump, you can't do it overnight. Don't wait until the boiler breaks before you look to get it installed. I think realistically, it's a 3-month process.
Right.
And that starts with a survey from a qualified engineer. Make sure you're going with someone who's MCS certified in order to get the government grant.
Perfect. And obviously we're in Hampstead Garden Suburb here. Did you need consent from the trust for this, or was it because you had a sort of hidden area you knew it would be okay?
We did need trust consent. That's because you're putting something in a garden which can alter the appearance of the house. That was very straightforward. I've heard that you don't need Barnett consent. We actually did in this house because we were doing other things such as putting in the aircon. But I believe, but you should check,
sure,
that you don't need Barnett consent.
Fantastic. And now there are government grants. So how much is a heat pump likely to cost someone, including that government grant? What are they likely to be paying at the end? And is it much more than, just replacing a boiler or not?
Yeah, so the government grant at the moment is £7,500, which is brilliant.
Massive.
Although you actually never see that money. So the installer will reclaim it on your behalf, which is good because you don't have to pay out and then wait to reclaim it. If your house is super straightforward, in theory, given where heat pumps are going right now, you should be able to get a heat pump for approximately the same price as a replacement boiler.
Wow.
The difficulty with houses in this area, as we know, is that they tend not to be super straightforward. So I think you do have to accept that it's probably going to cost you a little bit more right now than it would to just replace with a gas boiler.
And that's your initial outlay. And then obviously there's the running cost of the heat pump. How have you found your bills? Because some people have mentioned that, the heat pumps use electricity, obviously, as an alternative to gas, and that can be expensive at times.
Yeah. So it's a little difficult for me to say with this house because we didn't live in it before we renovated it. We bought it, we renovated it, and we moved in. But I can say that our energy bills here are far, far less than they were when we previously lived in an unrenovated, slightly larger house also in this area. And I think over time, although everybody probably knows that gas is cheaper per unit than electricity, it's expected that delta will decrease over time.
Now, some people with heat pumps obviously take other measures to ensure the heat pump will work well, and I can see behind us you have quite thick walls. They do look very thick. Is there anything hiding there that may be helping your heat pump do a great job, or perhaps saving you, wasting energy as part of that?
Yeah, so this house was definitely heat pump ready by the time we put the heat pump in. We did a full renovation, and as part of that we put in internal wall insulation on all of the external facing walls. We put in double glazing, we've insulated wherever we could, roof, underfloor, etc. So this house was definitely heat pump ready. But what I would say is, if you're unsure, and I know a lot of people will be nervous about putting a heat pump in as to whether or not they're going to end up with a drafty or cold house, one way you can test it is if you turn your boiler flow rate down to around 50 or 55 degrees. That's the similar temperature to what heat pumps are running the hot water through. So if your house remains comfortable at that kind of level, then you know that your house is heat pump ready. So it's a really good way of testing.
Fantastic. Now, just really some closing thoughts. It's been amazing today seeing your heat pump, where it is outside and inside, and understanding the costs and some of the things that we might need to consider with insulation. Do you have any final thoughts, any advice that you think people that are thinking about this might take on board when they're thinking about their home and their heating?
So we've just had a really positive experience. I love the fact it sort of warms my heart to think that we're now totally off fossil fuels. That's a really good feeling, and our energy bills are much lower as well, which is great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for showing us your home. Thank you for inspiring us all to have heat pumps. And as we look forward to 2040 and trying to move the Hampstead Garden Suburbs area to a net zero position, we do all need to adopt heat pumps in our home. Gas boilers are the number one most polluting item in the Hampstead Garden Suburb area. Second to that are cars. So it's a big step for many, and thank you for pioneering it. Thank you for sharing with us your journey. Thank you so much.